I think if you're a leader listening to this conversation, you have to look yourself in the mirror and saying, are you keeping the fire alive inside of your organization? You are the engager.
I think one has to be very diligent because everyone is influenced. Those that are listening to this, they may have, hundreds of employees that, see them as that large influence in their life.
When there was a big change happening, we would bring in our leaders and our inner circle, and we would have the inner circle spread whispers about this change and make the change not a big deal, and kind of soften people into the change, so when the change comes, the floor is prepared for it. Welcome everybody for the early show today. We got with us today a special guest. I've actually been talking about this special guest for a few weeks now on the show. I'm not sure if he knows it or not, but we got Jay Doran, the culture man. We're bringing him to the show today. And this guy's a consultant for high-level executives. I mean, last time I called him, he was at Warren Buffett's house doing a tour. I don't know who he's been talking to or what he's been doing, but it seems like he has connections and ties in all industries, specifically the mortgage industry. So I wanted to bring him on the show as he's a guy that I look up to as a mentor and I speak to all the time. That helps me. And I wanted to bring him on the show today and pick his brain and just let it ride. Very, very interesting mind, by the way. There's a lot of times I talk to Jay and I get lost in the conversation, and sometimes I never come back.
That makes two of us.
What's going on, my man?
I'm excited. This is an honor.
Thank you, man. I'm honored to have you on the show. So before we get started, why don't you just give us, a brief introduction? I know I met you at Bradley's studio and we kind of jumped straight into business. We never really got a lot of background from each other, but why don't you give us some background about yourself and how you got into culture?
Let's talk about our mutual friend for a second, who in a great sense plucked me out of obscurity in 2018 when I was running around speaking, advising, trying to make culture matter, and put me on that podcast, Dropping Bombs, episode 78, episode 120, and 703. You can kind of see our journey working together over the years. I became interested in culture consciously because I was impacted by some literature that talked about the importance of company values. And it was at that time that I recognized, I didn't have any values. Later on, it became clear to me through education and mentorship and working in businesses, trying to help them succeed, working with people, that I was actually a leader, a do as I say, not as I do leader. Deep down, I think I've always been interested in people. I've always been interested in learning, and I've had this calling to teach that I think my family's instilled in me. I think culture matters, and I'd love to talk about leadership and culture and business today, in whatever direction that you want to go into. So I would say it started about a decade ago with the interest and fascination around the literature and the recognition that I wasn't a leader that I'd want to follow. Standing in front of people and sharing that information pulled me right out of just being an operator and moving more into the advisory and consulting. So since then, worked with founders behind the scenes ever since, specifically founders, owners, those interested in being chief executive officers.
I mean, you speak to so many people. I mean, your podcast is overwhelming with how much podcast episodes you have and so many founders. It's like, where do I start and what do I listen to? When you speak to all these successful founders, some of them in the millions and billions, I mean, what are some of the commonalities you find in a great successful culture out there? Let's start there.
Engagement. I think right now, generally in business culture, I could easily get a ding right now that takes me away from this conversation. And then in this conversation, in this relationship with you, because I'm talking to you right now, there may be people listening, interpreting through their life story what we're talking about, but I'm talking to you. We have a relationship. I'm either present or I'm not. I'm engaged or I'm disengaged. So even in this conversation, I could become disengaged by seeing a text of something, and then all of a sudden I'm not here. I could be disengaged because I didn't prepare, because my mind is somewhere else, because because something else that's going on I'm not fully present. So in that example, I think business culture today is more disengaged than ever.
Why is that?
The values of our overall culture, maybe, right? We have a crisis of meaning on the macro scale. It's like some people don't know why they're working. Even those that work very hard don't know why they're working. I'd argue that even a founder may not know why they're working, because when you have limited resources and let's say no one taking one seriously, like in the beginning of the business, you just want to get it going, you want to get it started. There isn't as much time to think about what one has or doesn't have in their life. It's only when things start, like let's say there is a business that there's time to even think. There's a necessity to even think. And so, but on a big scale, it's a big question. I think that there's tremendous distraction, fear of missing out, plenty of places to put one's attention that could take one away from basically the simple answer be the work. Having a job. I actually disagree with the idea that in culture, right, to create a successful culture, any idea that a job is just over broke, like you may have heard that term or read books or seen people online talk, essentially make arguments that we shouldn't be working or that we should feel shame or insecurity around the responsibilities that we have as either an owner or let's say an employee. And I would actually challenge all of that and make the argument that one could be proud that they're just over broke, that they have employment or they are an employer. Going on away from their business for a long extended period of time is likely not the solution to their problem, but a pseudo solution to the symptoms that come with responsibility, that come with the accountability of other people if they're employing others or if they're leading others. Like there's all sorts of reasons to check out and be disengaged from work. And of course, with success, and we can go in another direction or go deeper. With success comes reevaluation. I'll give you an example. If all of us work together, whoever's listening, we all work together and we're going to have a meeting. We're going to ask ourselves, where are we today in our business? Where are our sales? Where are our costs? Who are our clients? Why are they our clients? How did we get them? We're going to have like a strategy meeting. And in that meeting, we realized last year's goal was X and we're at Y, and Y we did twice as good. We exceeded, we succeeded, right? That's a problem because we're going to naturally not know what to do next. Our purpose is not just coming from the lack of resources and the accountability of being broke or not having recognition that we're good enough. We're going to need to be responsible with our purpose. We're going to need to figure out why we're doing what we're doing, what our next goal is, what our next aim is. Somebody's going to have to lead that. That purpose, that spirit is going to have to come from somebody. And I would argue that's going to come from the leader. The leader isn't always the one with power, though, authority and influence. The leader isn't always the one that started it or is the chief of it. They might be distracted, disengaged, unclear, unsure, disenfranchised, alienated, lonely, afraid, and not courageous enough to step back in the ring. We need warriors. One of my favorite quotes, I want to share it. Heraclitus, 25 years ago, he's a warrior trainer, a philosopher, a genius of the highest order. Philosophers studied him after, 2,500 years ago. So one of the individuals that influenced the West. He said, if you give me 100 men, 10 of them shouldn't even be here. 80 are nothing but targets. 9 of them are real fighters. And we are lucky to have them, for they make the battle. But one is a warrior, and he will bring the others back. I live by that quote. Culture is a consequence of that quote. Where is the warrior? Who are the real fighters? Who shouldn't be here and why? Are you a target? So engagement.
It's funny you say that because that word engagement doesn't come up in my leadership academy a lot. And now that you're saying it, I've realized everything I teach leaders and companies ties to the engagement of the overall people. The morning huddles, the kickoffs, the contests, the stack ranks and the visibility, right? The trainings, the one-on-ones, the relationship. I think all of that is tied to the engagement of somebody coming into work.
I believe the reason I was so impressed by you and pursued this kinship was it was so clear how engaged, intense, competent you were. You are a competent and therefore confident advisor, consultant, leader. Engagement pulls you in, and so I don't think it can be faked. I believe it's necessary for culture to matter. But yeah, you are extremely engaged, and that's why I've had you on the Culture Culture Matters podcast. And yeah, I'm very excited about your career and everything you're doing to help people.
All right. So a question twofold. Number one, if you're a leader listening and you don't have that engaged culture inside of your organization, where do you start? What do you do?
And one thing that comes to mind is be careful of those that preach anything that isn't around engagement. Now, also, I recognize that is like, don't just take my word for it though, because then it could be dogma. But don't just, the guy that talks about engagement, follow him. But my challenge in that, be careful of those influences that may be pushing one to not be engaged.
Talking about the bad seeds in a business?
We're going to be, if we're at the top of the food chain where it can be confused as lonely, where are we getting our information? We're getting it from podcasts like this. We're getting it from college curriculum or not. We're getting it from books. We're getting it from mentors and advisors. I think one has to be very diligent because everyone is influenced. Those that are listening to this, they may have, hundreds of employees that see them as that large influence in their life. They also have people like us outside of the medium, outside of the frame, that are influencing them on what not to do and what to do, on what not to think and what to think and how to think. Hopefully, how to think. Be diligent in vetting, me, right? If someone's going to listen to this and look me up and try to find information about me, who's speaking. I think one thing I've recognized in life, I think things are backwards most of the time. So maybe like that person that you're listening to that it feels like, I don't like anything that they're saying. That actually might be a flag to lean deeper in, ask more questions and try to, it's like the confirmation bias. Everything that they're saying, it just all sounds exactly right. I agree with all of it. I'm in. So do one's research and due diligence so that, one that's listening is, because they're a customer, right? Business is about, Peter Drucker said, the purpose of a business is to create a customer. Everyone listening to this is a customer of philosophy, a customer of knowledge as it relates to business. They're a customer of dopamine. They're a customer of the spirit. And so one wants to do their due diligence because the information that we take in influences the philosophies that we have, that we articulate and we live by, or we contradict. So that's just one thing. It's like, who are your advisors? Who are your mentors? Who are your coaches? Who are the people? And what are the institutions that you're getting your information from? That's one.
That's for the leader or for them to think about that for their people?
Well, if I'm not a big part of that for my people, what am I doing? So one thing, when people are disengaged from their company because the company is missing variables of engagement, the company isn't having the rituals it once did, the company isn't reinvesting capital back in the business, people know, they feel it. It just isn't what it used to be. People search for that. People come and listen to this podcast. People go to events. People go and they search for it. People leave companies and we start our own. Those that advise, those that consult, oftentimes we're the most competent, high-performing humans in a culture somewhere at some time. And eventually, at some point, it's a healthy elevation, into the field of advisory, or an unhealthy one that eventually becomes healthy too, depending on the journey. So this goes for any employee too, any employee of any company.
Well, that's what I was going to say. What if there's an employee that's, somewhere that doesn't have that engagement in the culture, but they're happy where they are and they want to build that engagement on their own? What do you have to say to them? What do they need to focus on? If I'm at a company where the engagement's not there, leadership's not there, culture's not there, but I still want to do this and I want to do it at a high level, how do I keep myself going for individuals?
There's a video on YouTube where Christopher Walken is talking. I don't know what movie it's from. I think it's a pool movie or like a gambling movie or something. He's talking about the lion,
the gazelles, yeah,
jackals.
Oh, jackals.
The jackals come out and they're nipping at his heels and the cubs are clawing him. And this animal comes out and the lion sits there and does nothing and waits. Come to mind like, this would be a good one to memorize, right? And all of a sudden the lion roars and runs like the wind and tears the living shit out of all these animals. Every once in a while, as a leader, we have to get in to show people what our values are and not forget we're not above it. Sam Walton, he would go to, it's in the Walton Made in America, Sam Walton's autobiography he wrote on his deathbed. He was engaged. He would go and visit the stores and measure the aisles. He was engaged. Being engaged doesn't automatically infer the extreme. That's the over, right? It's the micromanager. We don't want to swing all the way to one side where, we're overly delegatory. So I mean, one thing is, do we have the humility to show our values every once in a while? Okay, that's one thing. Do we have the humility? Sorry, I think the laundry thing, I don't know if you could hear that. Another is, do we have meetings? Like, do we have meetings? If 1 to 10, 1 low, 10 high. If anyone listening to this says, okay, I'm the one leading the meeting, I'm in charge of it, and I would give it like a 3. I don't look forward to them. Well, then there are missing elements to that meeting. If we're going to gather, it should be as exciting and informative and inclusive and safe and productive as if, we invited like everyone that's listening to this into this conversation, took questions. Hey, Jay, I disagree with some of what you're saying, and this is why. Oh, yeah. Okay. What do you mean by that? How so? Well, like there has to be that degree of respect involved in that engagement from the person that has authority. And that's something that can be learned and will benefit. So like, are we gathering? How do we gather? Are they effective? That's one thing that someone that's working within a culture that's in a position of authority is going to have to learn how to do to increase the likelihood of future leaders showing that they are leaders. That's another thing.
Vision casting. I talk about vision casting a lot. You said that at one time, people like me and you were at a place where we were living the culture, we were harnessing the culture, and at some point we moved on. But if those places, companies, leaders recognized the power inside of us and helped vision cast our visions, maybe they could have kept us longer.
Oh, this is an important piece. There are different types of cultures. In some countries, they kill you if you leave the country or your family. They try to, right? Now you're dead. In other countries, you can leave whenever time you want. They're not the government's not coming after you. Use that analogy to think, or metaphor to think about a business. Graduate, like turnover is natural. Think of it like it's healthy. It's life. Heraclitus actually said, life is constant change. There's like this freaking laundry thing going on. Sorry. Life is constant flux. Man never steps into the same river twice. It's not the same man. It's not the same river. So what I mean by that is the values of a culture are going to be revealed in how people actually are permitted to outgrow an organization, how people actually do leave, on what terms, how that process occurs. A culture that's, I would argue inevitably going to go down is one where somebody last month, was the star player on every plaque. And then they decided, let's say, to go and pursue their dream of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, to no fault of the organization, because it's just the natural, like the kids leave the household, right? Children leave the home. And then that institution decides to destroy them. I see that happen. I mean, it's a pretty normal manifestation of scarcity and fear. And I would argue a disengaged leadership, right? Because when there's engaged leadership all the way at the top, it's less scary when people naturally leave the country because the growth is coming elsewhere. If we're like a country that doesn't produce enough resources, doesn't trade enough, doesn't have systems and processes and an education system where the population can move up, the employees can move up, and we're not reinvesting into the business, what surprise would it be that they would leave, that they would want to go to a different country, they would want to go to a different company? So like, turnover is actually healthy, is where I'm going with this. The question is, how much of it is there, and how does it actually how does that process reveal itself? How do we talk about those that have left? That's like something that you there's a hidden value in not talking poorly of people that have left if they've done it on honest terms. That shows the values of a culture that will have a ripple effect. You don't know how many people. So I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of business owners, like deeply, and the stories, there's patterns. Like some of the most successful people in their field say how many mentees they created that no longer work for them, but those relationships ended on great terms from a business standpoint. And that mentee spent the rest of their career telling the truth. That was a great experience, and what a wonderful company. And that person helped me, and they changed my life. And maybe they'll come back. If they want to go back to that country, they can come back. If they want to go back to that company, that is a night and day different world, different universe. And when the leadership are on a mission, truly a mission, and they have that, and there's that spirit and excitement, there isn't a lot of that anxiety to be so negatively reactive to turnover doesn't manifest itself, in my view. It doesn't. And the observation, and experience doesn't manifest itself.
I mean, I think you got to have systems and processes in place where you always have a future leader bench being built, and you always have people stepping up to leadership, and there's always all-stars being built. Once you have all of that running automatically, you're not going to be worried about losing players or players moving on, because there's always another upcoming player.
I should probably say this too. No matter what we do, people will betray us.
Right. This is what Jay does. He just takes dark twists.
Yeah. How we relate to the prisoners reveals our value system. And there's an argument on every side you can imagine that we get. But like in that example, I would argue it's like, imagine, you're a part of a town, you pay your taxes. So you're part of this company, you're kicking butt. The tax is the money that the company makes on you, in a sense. Your labor leads to profit. If you're kicking butt and taking names, it doesn't feel like theft if the company is protecting your kids. Meaning, if you're sitting next to somebody that's disengaged, screwing the company over, like they're just not bought in, and the company's not doing anything about it, not trying to get to the bottom of it, that's like the police not showing up when there was a murder next door.
How do you recommend they find these people?
If we're all paying attention, we're going to know who's engaged and who's not engaged. This is where it gets complicated. The question it's like the chick, why are people disengaged or engaged? And that's where the leadership of the company really influences that. However, what I'm trying to say is no matter what one does, there's still going to be a percentage of people that choose to create problems. And it's how we handle those problems. Are we handling them in a way that is in alignment with the values that we say we have or we think we live? Or are we acting out and living out the opposite of what we say we have and think we live? That will reveal us. So I'm just trying, I don't want to paint the picture that, it's going to be...
Well, no, you got to have gatekeepers on the floor, right? You got to have people that protect your culture, that are on the floor, that are not leaders, but they're your studs, they're your stars, they're your inner circle, and you have those people sporadically around your business. And those people are your guardian shields. Like, for example, when there was a big change happening, we would bring in our leaders and our inner circle, and we would have the inner circle spread whispers about this change and make the change not a big deal, and kind of soften people into the change, so when the change comes, the floor is prepared for it. Or we would have the inner circle step up and volunteer for something if we were asking to volunteer publicly for this thing. Like, have them play the role and protect it. Or they would shut down the noise on the floor because they had good relationships with leadership, so the noise, people would be scared to create noise or kind of like humiliated to even say anything negative because they know this is a positive place. Everyone's connected to the mission and the culture here. So I feel like you got to have those soldiers out there that do have your back. If you have the whole floor out there and nobody out there is your whisperer, your inner circle, you have no special relationships, it's going to be hard not to know what's going on. You got to seek the feedback, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great yes. And when anything is negative, let's say negative or perceived negative, for us to know the difference between useful and irrelevant, we have to listen. And that takes values. That takes qualities of leadership, arguably. Because one of the things that manifests as the organization gets louder is oftentimes people that can be perceived as the negative ones, how they're saying what they're saying may not be the easiest to hear or swallow. The leader is going to set the tone for that. It might be right at the same time. It might be the most valuable information and that's where the lead, whoever, and that's where I go. If are individuals in positions of authority, title, they have positions that people are looking to them as leaders, they set the tone of safety so that they can get the truth from the people below them that are in it. And if they're not in it mentally and emotionally, and they're not bought in for whatever reason, it could be outside of the organization, it could be a combination of that, because of those above them, there's going to be less trust, and there will be more things that might just be true and hard to hear that are perceived as negative. The negative thing is well, that's where listening and communication and trust come in. If there's strong leadership that's bought in and people trust them and there's trust there, the citizens will course correct. They'll stop the crime before it happens. I think that's where you were going, like if I understand it correctly.
Yes.
They'll stop the crime before it happens. There's an accountability, the invisibility. Oh, this goes to a different part of the conversation. The distinction between accountability and responsibility. Accountability is given or taken. Responsibility is modeled. Accountability is given or taken. It's given in speech. Like, hey, you're not doing that well. What's up? It's also taken with, hey, we're taking away your opportunity for promotion because of your results and your inability to change based on 17 conversations where we listened and gave you every resource we had. Accountability is given through words, taken through action. Responsibility is modeled. It's modeled in how we behave. If we're not at work, emotionally, mentally, in spirit, everybody knows. The question is, do they say anything? And if they don't say anything, as Nietzsche said, truth unspoken becomes poison. Resentment grows and trust decays. And now silos are created. Politics emerges. Bureaucracy. The top performers have side hustles. The bottom performers aren't doing anything. The chiefs are social media gurus, but they're not working.
Yeah.
Right? It's an either or. It's not an integration. Man, I'm telling you, the biggest epidemic we have in business today is confusion, delusion, and disengagement. And that's where culture matters. It's like, we shouldn't have to talk about this. It's embarrassing.
Could we speak on this in an individual level for people that are not, well, I believe you're a leader regardless, but let's say for the individuals that are not in a leadership position, okay, they're disengaged with their own sales, with their own career, with their own business. What are your tips to get somebody re-engaged into their own purpose and life and goals for people that are struggling, waking up with that same energy every single day? How do we get individuals re-engaged?
Are you in a relationship? Do you like your partner? Do you tell them the truth? Do you listen to them? Do they listen to you? Do you meet? Because you're the leader of that. You have kids. Do you play with them? Do you not? That's one, because you're a human being. Like, we're humans and there's things we have to do. Are you a part of a community? Do you frequent it? Do you read? Do you listen? Who's your mentors? Who are your mentees? Do they like you? Do they dislike you? Why? Who are your mentors? Why? Oh, are you in school? What is school to you? Why'd you join the company that you're in? Do you save money? Can you? Why not? What do you do with your free time? What do you do after 5? What do you do after 7? Do you work till 8? Do you like your family? Why not? Why do you? We're all individuals, right? Culture is like character. Outside of work, I have my character and I have my history, my future. My present is a compilation of, or combination of, the past and where I'm aiming. I might need help to look back. I'm afraid to have therapy. I don't want to meet that psychologist. I'm not taking that medication. Where are you going? Kierkegaard, one of my favorite thinkers. Life can only be understood backwards and must be lived forwards. Who are my peers? Can I have peers that, can I have new friends that challenge me and also never talk to the people I went to high school with that I do love, but I don't know how to communicate with them because now I'm successful? These are struggles. Like, well, how well am I listening? Am I humble? Can I burden this responsibility? I think on an individual level, it's like, what are my values? What do I not stand for? What do I stand for? How well am I living what I stand for? Am I telling my boss what I think? Am I afraid of them? Why? Am I afraid I'll get fired for saying what I think? Well, that makes sense. I need this job. Well, then it goes back to like the home life. What's the plan? Who's in my life? Are we on the same page? What's the plan? How do we get out of this? How can I show up best at work and then plan the future? And then it goes back to, do I save? Can I save? Why not? Do I invest? Why not? Am I building myself? Do I read? Do I write? Like,
how many books did you say you read a year?
Well, I listen more than I physically read. And every year I post that list. It's anywhere between I start, by the way, more than I finish. I'm all over the place, but I'll start, anywhere between 250 and 350, and I'll finish generally a third of whatever I start. That number's gone down over time as I've started more.
What's the point of starting a bunch and not finishing?
Well, when it comes to learning, I think the most helpful thing I could say to people, because people learn differently, is do something every day, whether it's listen to a podcast or physically read a page. Maybe it becomes 5, invest into that mentor. So that's what I would say for the people. For me, I mean, I'm looking for that one thought. I might read 3 chapters of a book. I might look at I'll look at the table of content. Like, I'll give you an example. I like Peterson, Dr. Peterson, and so like,
he's getting aggressive.
Oh, I don't know much. What do you think? What do you mean?
No, like I've been watching his recent podcast, and it's like he's just like he's up on the edge of his seat, just like he looks like he's trying to pop some shit off. I don't know. He's just like more assertive and aggressive than usual. Maybe it's his new style though. Like with Elon Musk, I felt like he was pressing Elon Musk a lot during that interview, and I'm like,
Oh, I didn't watch that in full yet. Adam Grant has a new book called Think Again about reflection and looking at things. I might go to the table of contents and read the three, oh, this chapter looks like something that could influence my behavior. I want to be exposed to that. Or I'm driving my car and listening to a book is going to be more rewarding for me based on the season of life that I'm in than listening to music. But that doesn't mean music doesn't also have a valuable quality to my life. It's not either or. I found that a lot of entrepreneurs benefit from Audible more than they give themselves chance. Like a lot of people that I've interviewed, a lot of the entrepreneurs I've interviewed had said, like, if I push them a little bit to do the audio, and just keep listening, even if the mind starts wandering, just like give it a don't just keep rewinding it or stopping it. Just kind of just go with the flow. Don't overthink it. We're not in school. The feedback, this is just anecdotal over 10 years, but the feedback's always like, wow, I'm getting so much out of this book. Like I'm not overly attached to trying to remember every single word. Remember, we're conditioned. It's not like we're in business. We're all going to be academics and we're not writing dissertations. And that's not what's happening. We're just trying to get information that we could put into practice. In my industry, where I am responsible for strategy and the increased likelihood of thinking going on and a sounding board for reason, and it's reading and learning and is very, very important. So an advisor or a consultant that doesn't study, I would argue, I'm not that seems like something's off there, because that's part of the value. If somebody in that position is let's say constantly studying and working through and simplifying and working to make things accessible to the person that's running a company, that they're not a professor, their job is to act out and act upon the strategies and act and execute and help people execute, right? So one thing, I wouldn't want to turn everybody that's listening to this into some bibliophile, but studying is important, right? Education is important. And my feedback for people would be like, are you trying to learn new things every day? I mean, and if they're listening to this, then they've already proven that they are, because they're putting themselves in a position to be engaged with something. But yeah, that would be my answer. Listen, read. They're different experiences.
yeah. So your advice for everybody is, if you want to get re-engaged, know your purpose, what you're doing it all for, and try to better yourself every single day.
Yeah, and like maybe that isn't even their fate. Maybe they just need to follow someone that is. Pick your leaders. To some degree, I think there's inborn fire in people. I am called to whatever this is that we're doing, and I have always been called to it. Whether I suppressed it, I've repressed it. It's been a struggle ripping away parts of myself to reveal it. It's in me. It might, I'm not going to try to tell everybody it's in them. Pick your leaders carefully. Relative. Like, yeah, what do you want? What do you want? Why? Who do you want to do it with? Who do you not want to do it with? How do I show up? Right? How do you show up? How do I show up? Am I, this is highly addictive, right? It's a part of our brain. Before you know it, 75 minutes go by and I'm like posting 800. I did this last night. I posted like 100 of these, on Instagram. When you scroll, I follow all these like book things and I like to share them on my Instagram. And I convinced myself like that was valuable because I'm getting dopamine. It's like I'm posting 100 and there's people that follow me. So they're getting to see these little clips that I'm seeing as I scroll, and I'm posting out these motivational things or these interesting videos that have meaning to me, and books, right? Like I'm posting these things, and that's Instagram incentivizing me in my brain to share other people's content. And okay, no conspiracy, great. That people are digesting that, they're getting value from it. But what if I told myself the morning of yesterday, from between 7 p.m. and 10 p.m., I'm going to read this book, or I'm going to play with my kids, or I'm going to play chess with my wife. But I'm so pulled into this. I'm disengaged. I didn't keep my word from this morning. That shit happens all the time. To me, it happens to me. And my bet was it's going to happen. It's happening to the culture. It's happening to other, it's probably happening to all of us at varying degrees. Us like making a promise to myself that I'm going to do something. Like I actually, if I'm honest with myself, I think yesterday morning I wanted to read a book. That's why I'm talking about this right now. And I ended up getting addicted, almost like to crack cocaine of posting these videos last night. Spent like 2 hours doing that. And then I was so anxious because I still had to do my reading that I was up to like 1 a.m. listening to an audiobook because I had to compensate for missing it. It's like, then I didn't sleep as well as I could have. And I got up later than I normally do. I don't want anyone coming out of this video thinking that I'm on a high horse. It's just my own autobiography. So yeah, culture.
Well, you're only human, man. It's okay. Sometimes I was like that where I'm trying to do everything. And if I miss something, I try to slide it in here and then end up staying up late, waking up early, not feeling the best. I've realized that sometimes you got to have time blocks for it happens. It happens time blocks, and that's a time block of I'm taking my son to jiu-jitsu at 5 o'clock. I had other meetings. I pushed them away. I got business to originate. I pushed it away. It. Take my son to jiu-jitsu. The world's going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine.
What do you think the audience gets from this conversation?
I think they get the theme, I think, was engagement. That's where it all started. I think if you're a leader listening to this conversation, you have to look yourself in the mirror and saying, are you keeping the fire alive inside of your organization? You are the engager. I really like the warrior story you told. And if you're an individual, how are you keeping yourself engaged? I think the theme of this is how to get engaged in life and business and leadership. I think it is all engagement, man. That's really what it is. I think habits turn into engagement. Rituals turn into engagement. For everybody listening that's going to be listening, it's Jay Doran, the culture man. All right, JJ. I'll talk to you, man. Thanks so much for being on the show. We'll bring you on for a part 2.